This presentation is about blended learning, what to do when kids are glued to their iPads, incorporating technology in math instruction. For this presentation, we will begin with an overview of the presentation. Next, we will explore what is blended learning. Next, we will review concepts of blended learning. Next, we will try out some technology as examples of blended learning. Then, we will discuss some tips for technology use at school. And finally, we will conclude with a wrap-up. Overview. Welcome to the third mentor training. This session will explore how technology can be a great tool to learn and engage students in math. The outcomes for this presentation are to 1. Understand the importance of blended learning for today's youth. 2. Define blended learning. 3. Describe 4 models of blended learning. 4. Explore math using blended learning approach. In the next part of this presentation, we will explore what is blended learning. Blended learning video exploration. Often, adults may think that kids are spending too much time on their devices. There are many pros and cons to technology use. With our following activities, hopefully we can highlight that there are many benefits to using technology, especially for learning. And if students are going to spend so much time on their devices, we can provide positive learning experiences and supports for them. In order to learn about blended learning, we are first going to watch a few videos that explain what blended learning is and show what blended learning can look like in a classroom and at home. Video 1, Overview and Rotation Model. View the video, What Blended Learning Looks Like in the Classroom, at the link provided. Video 2, Flipped Classroom. View the video, What a Flipped Classroom Looks Like, at the link provided. Video 3, Flex Model. View the video Redesigning the School Day at Summit Public Schools using a flex model at the link provided. In the next part of this presentation, we will review concepts of blended learning. Definition of blended learning. Blended learning mixes various event-based activities, including face-to-face classrooms, live e-learning, and self-paced learning. What things are being blended? Blending offline and online learning. Blending self-paced and live collaborative learning. Blending structured and unstructured learning. Blending custom content with off-the-shelf content. Blending learning, practice, and performance support. The videos provided a little background about what blended learning is and gave some examples. Now we will go a little more in depth to define blended learning and review the 4 models of blended learning. Blended learning is a combination of a traditional classroom with one that uses technology. There are many ways to blend traditional and technology. Blended learning can provide options for students, which follows the Universal Design for Learning principles, meet different students' learning levels, which is differentiation, and be fun for students as students can relate to the use of technology and media, which matches students' culture. Characteristics of blended learning. With blended learning, learning is time, no longer restricted to the school day or school year, place, no longer restricted to the walls of the classroom, path, no longer restricted to the pedagogy used by the teacher, and pace, no longer restricted to the pace of an entire classroom of students. Some of these elements are taken for granted, but can actually be restrictions to learning. Can you think of reasons or examples of how time, place, path, and pace could hinder a student's learning? Examples include time. A student may not have enough time to complete their work during class, or a student may take particular interest in a subject but only has limited time to explore it because there is not enough class time. Place. Students often don't see how what they are learning in class has anything to do with the real world. With the internet, students can experience the subject matter outside of the classroom in the real world. They can travel to other places via online and see real-life examples of what they are learning. Path. The way a certain teacher teaches may not be the best fit for a particular student. Or maybe a student prefers to work in smaller groups or with direct one-to-one instruction. With online teaching materials, students have more options to find a teaching style that better suits them. Pace. People learn at different paces. No two learners are the same. Some students may fall behind only when compared with others who grasp the concept faster. Those students may be able to understand the lesson better if they had had more time to digest what is being said or taught. The four models of blended learning are: rotation model. Within a given course or subject, students rotate on a fixed schedule or at the teacher's discretion between learning modalities. Most often, these are centers where students complete different activities, lessons, at least one of which is online learning. Flex model. This is when content and instruction are delivered primarily by the internet. Students move on an individually customized, fluid schedule among learning modalities, and the teacher of record is on site. The teacher of record or other adults provide face-to-face support on a flexible and adaptive, as-needed basis through activities such as small group instruction, group projects, and individual tutoring. Self-blend model describes a scenario in which students choose to take one or more courses entirely online to supplement their traditional courses, and the teacher of record is the online teacher. Enriched virtual model, a whole school experience in which within each course, students divide their time between attending a brick-and-mortar campus and learning remotely using online delivery of content and instruction, usually at home. This differs from flipped classroom because students don't go to brick-and-mortar campus every day. It differs from self-blended because it is not meant to be a supplement to traditional educational classes. Rotation model types. The rotation model is perhaps the most familiar model because it is easiest to adapt into traditional classrooms and schools. We will look briefly at four types of rotation models. Station rotation. Within a given subject, students rotate on a fixed schedule or at the teacher's discretion among stations in one classroom. Online learning, small group or full class instruction, group projects, individual tutoring, and pencil and paper assignments. Lab rotation. Within a given subject, students rotate on a fixed schedule or at the teacher's discretion among locations on the brick-and-mortar campus, a learning lab for predominantly online learning, and additional classrooms for other learning modalities. For example, on a scheduled day and time, students go into a computer lab. Flipped classroom. Within a given subject, students rotate on a fixed schedule between face-to-face teacher-guided practice on campus during the standard school day and online delivery of content and instruction of the same subject from a remote location after school. The primary delivery of content and instruction is online. We saw an example of this in one of the videos we explored. In the traditional classroom, content is usually presented by the teacher during the class time. Problem-solving time, if it occurs during the class time, usually occurs at the end of the session. Homework is defined as problem-solving activities of the student in the home environment following the presentation of the content during the class time. The flipped classroom, in contrast, flips this workflow around. The student is presented with the content in the home environment first, then uses class time for problem-solving activities. The primary role of the teacher in the traditional classroom is usually master of content. The primary role of the teacher in the flipped classroom is usually professional learning coach. In the flipped classroom, the teacher structures the classroom activities to personalize the learning for individual students. Individual rotation. Within a given subject, students rotate on an individually customized fixed schedule among learning modalities, at least one of which is online learning. Students do not necessarily rotate to each available station or modality. Example: Carpe Diem Collegiate High School and Middle School assigns each student a specific schedule that rotates them between online learning in the Learning Center and offline learning. Each rotation lasts 35 minutes. To learn more about Carpe Diem Collegiate High School and Middle School, please view the video at the following link. A lesson using blended learning. Some examples of how to add in elements of blended learning. Live events, synchronous instructor-led events, such as lectures, video conferences, and synchronous chat sessions. Self-paced learning, for example, internet and CD-ROM. Collaboration, such as through email, thread discussions, and collaborative group work. Assessment, for example, tests, quizzes, grades, narrative feedback, and portfolio. Support materials, for example, physical and virtual reference materials and FAQ forms. These are 5 examples of lesson components that could implement blended learning. In this part of the presentation, you will have the opportunity to try out some technology that could be incorporated in a blended learning approach. Try out some technology. See how using technology can help children learn math. Glogster. Glogster is available online and can also be used on iPad. A glog is a graphic blog that allows users to create multimedia posters or presentations. Glogster provides templates that users can copy and personalize by adding text, images, videos, links to websites, and more. Users can upload images directly from Google or from their personal devices and can upload videos from YouTube or their personal devices. Glogs can be published as public or private. Your teacher will always see the glogs a student creates. Classmates will also be able to see a student's glog. Students can use the lessons and activities published by other users to review and learn math topics that they need to know or are interested in learning. At previous math camps, our students were given the opportunity to create digital multimedia posters using Glogster. They chose a topic that demonstrated the math concepts we learned about at camp and followed a rubric to create their posters. Students were able to incorporate technology and creativity in presenting math in an engaging way, and Glogster was a great way for students to demonstrate their understanding of the math topics in a personal way. View the links provided to see examples of student work. Show Me app. See an example of how a math teacher uses this app at the link provided. And look through some sample lessons provided in the link provided. With this app, teachers could create lessons and students can view them on their own time at their own pace. They can also review the materials as much as they need. Students can also create their own Show Me presentations as a way to demonstrate their understanding of the math concept. Students can also use the lessons and activities published by other users to review and learn math topics that they need to know or are interested in learning. GeoGebra is a fairly new interactive app that can be adapted for all ages and math and science levels. There are math tools available which you can use to practice skills in graphing, geometry, and more. People have also created interactive lessons for all ages and levels that you are able to view and use. GeoGebra can be used online or downloaded as an app to use offline. With this app, teachers can create lessons and students can view them on their own time and at their own pace. They can also review the materials as much as they need. Students can also use the lessons and activities published by other users to review and learn math topics that they need to know or are interested in learning. What started out as a way to tutor in math online has now become a vast library of online video lectures and texts for almost every school subject at various academic levels and in numerous languages. Learn more at Khan Academy and look through math lessons at the link provided. IXL is an online program that provides practice math and other subject problems for students by grade level and math topic. IXL can also diagnose students' needs and performance, give individual or small group assignments, and provide parents and teacher with reports of students' work in progress. Learn more about IXL by visiting the links provided. GoMath. Many schools in the country are turning to GoMath for math curriculum. If your student uses this textbook for school, there is also an online component. Learn more about GoMath by visiting the link provided. Math games. Learn math while playing games. Students and adults can play games that incorporate the math concept they need to practice. If your student is going to play games online anyway, why not make it a math game? Try out the math games at the links provided. Prodigy is an online game. Users create an avatar and travel through a virtual fantasy world using math to advance to different levels and acquire objects. It is geared for grades 1 through 8, is adaptive, as students take a diagnostic test to begin and the program continually assesses their learning, and teachers receive data and reports on students' use. Try out and learn more about Prodigy at the links provided. Intelligent Tutoring Systems. Intelligent Tutoring Systems, or ITS, are computer-based programs that aid in the learning process and build cognitive skills of the students. They are usually implemented in the classroom with little to no intervention of the teacher. Most provide immediate feedback, customizable curriculum, and can produce data reports on students and classes. It is likely that your student uses some type of ITS for their math course. They have access to these programs outside of school and can use them as much as they want during the school year. Here are two examples of ITS that participating schools use. Learn more about iLearn and ALEKS by visiting the links provided. Algebra apps. Explore these apps that are specifically for helping to improve algebra. Visit the links provided to find lists of algebra apps and websites. In this part of the presentation, we will review tips for using technology at school. Tips for technology use at school. How to effectively use technology for learning and learning math. Set up ground rules. Talk with your students before use. It's a good idea to set up rules before use to avoid problems later. Explain expectations. Make sure your student knows expectations for what they use the iPad for and what not to use it for. If you believe that using the iPad is a privilege, or if you use it as a reward, remind them of that. Establish what kind of content is inappropriate and explain why. Sometimes students may not know what content you disapprove of, or they may wander somewhere online that you may not want them to be. Make sure you are clear about what is appropriate and what is inappropriate so that they know what to do in such situations if they come across inappropriate content. Discuss consequences for rule breaking. Set up some consequences for rule breaking. For example, if your student breaks a rule, they won't be allowed to use the iPad for other uses or for a few days. Reevaluate rules if necessary. Sometimes you need to reevaluate rules or make new ones as new circumstances arise. Limit. Access. At school, there are filters on internet browsers that block certain websites, and the school tablets only have certain applications available for student use. You can mimic this filtering by limiting access on the tablets and enabling restrictions to only allow access to certain apps. Time. It can be difficult to keep track of time once you get started using apps. You can put a timer on the iPad that automatically puts the device on sleep mode. This may help mitigate any arguments or behaviors when the time limit is up. Volume. If you don't want your students to use headphones so that you know what they're listening to, then you can set a volume limit on the iPad. This way the device doesn't get too loud. Location. It may be easier to monitor what your student does on the iPad if he or she is using it in a central and open location. Tips for encouraging math learning. Organize apps. Organize math apps together in one folder or on one screen so that they are easily accessible. Challenge your students to set goals, such as how much time to spend using math apps, how many days to use them, how many lessons to do, what kind of scores to achieve, and help them to achieve those goals. Remind your students to use the apps. Remind them of their goals. Encourage. Encourage your students to use the math apps, try their best, and share their work with you. Ensure variety and content to keep their interest. Having different apps to work with, maybe some more game-like and some more tutor or learning type, can help to sustain interest rather than just having all tutor or learning type. Talk with your students about their math work, their app experiences. Having a face-to-face component to accompany app use can help place the technology into the real-world setting. Talking with your students about their progress in a math app can be encouraging and help them be excited about continuing to learn math. You could even help relate math content to real-life situations. We will conclude this presentation with a wrap-up. Thank you for viewing this presentation on blended learning. Our next presentation will be on Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. Multiple children, multiple learning styles. Applying universal design for learning principles to math lesson plans.